So today we are announcing that we'll be filing a lawsuit against the Trump administration in the Northern District of California. This effort is co-led by San Francisco and Santa Clara County, and you'll hear shortly from our Santa Clara County Council, Tony Lopresti. Since his first term, Donald Trump has tried different ways to coerce cities into doing the job of the federal government and carrying out federal immigration enforcement. Since taking office on January the 20th, Trump and his administration have doubled down on those efforts. They have targeted sanctuary localities and states with executive orders and agency actions meant to illegally compel local jurisdictions into carrying out the president's priorities and allowing the federal government to commandeer local law enforcement officers as ICE agents. The federal actions make clear that cities like San Francisco will be defunded if we do not give up our local authority and autonomy and comply. His executive order, titled Protecting the American People Against Invasion, orders federal agencies to illegally cut off federal funding to jurisdictions with sanctuary policies. To implement this executive order and to carry out Trump's wishes, the U.S. Department of Justice sent memos on January the 21st and this Wednesday, February the 5th, that instruct U.S. DOJ personnel to investigate and civilly or criminally prosecute local officials in sanctuary jurisdictions that do not actively assist in immigration enforcement. These are not idle threats. Yesterday, the Trump administration brought a lawsuit against the city of Chicago, Cook County, the state of Illinois, and local and state officials challenging their sanctuary laws. Their lawsuit made the prosecution of state and local officials for following their laws a reality. The lawsuit that we're going to be filing later on today with a number of cities and counties lay out exactly how these executive orders and U.S. DOJ memos violate a whole host of laws. Their actions fly in the face of fundamental constitutional provisions. They violate plain statutory language and numerous court orders. Our lawsuit describes how their actions violate the Constitution's 10th Amendment, the separation of powers doctrine, the spending clause, the due process clause, and the Administrative Procedures Act. We will be asking the court to declare these actions unlawful and to prevent the Trump administration from enforcing the challenged portions of the executive orders and U.S. DOJ memos. I want to be clear. The Trump administration is asserting a right it does not have. They are trying to tell us how to use our resources and to commandeer our local law enforcement. This is the federal government coercing local officials to bend to their will or face defunding or prosecution, and that is illegal or authoritarian. And last I checked, we still live in a democracy under the rule of law, and the federal government needs to follow the law. Local officials have a right to do their jobs without threats or interference from the federal government. Now, let me note that none of these actions targeting sanctuary jurisdictions will improve public safety. Sanctuary laws improve public safety, and that is their purpose. Our city's sanctuary laws have been in place since 1989. Studies have consistently shown immigrants are less likely to commit crimes, and sanctuary jurisdictions are either seeing no increase in crime or have lower crime rates. As a result of sanctuary laws, victims and witnesses of crime are willing to come forward and report crimes to the police. And when law enforcement and communities trust each other, we get criminals off the streets, making everyone safer. These were points that were made in a recent statement by the California Police Chiefs Association, representing hundreds of police chiefs in our state. Eroding trust and targeting hardworking families with threats of deportation does the opposite. It makes individuals fearful to report crimes, to go to school, to get needed health care. It makes us all less safe. Now, Donald Trump and his allies like to spread falsehoods that sanctuary jurisdictions harbor criminals. That is simply not true. The federal government knows the identity and has the fingerprints of every inmate in San Francisco jails. If the federal government has legal reason to arrest someone, they can do so by obtaining a criminal warrant or a court order. The purpose of our local sanctuary laws is not to interfere with or impede lawful federal immigration enforcement. But let me say this. Immigration enforcement is the federal government's responsibility, not the responsibility of state and local governments. Sanctuary policies prioritize using our scarce local law enforcement resources to actually fight crime, not do the job of the federal government. Now, during the first Trump administration, San Francisco and Santa Clara sued the federal government after the administration attempted to withhold federal funds from the city based on its sanctuary policies like it is trying to do today. And we won. Federal district courts and the Ninth Circuit U.S. Court of Appeals ruled that the conditions the Trump administration attempted to place on federal funding were unconstitutional and that our local sanctuary policies comply with federal law. No one is interfering with the federal government's ability to do their job. But the Trump administration is certainly interfering with our ability to do our job. They're trying to take away our autonomy and interfering with our ability to keep our residents safe. And thus, we have no choice but to seek relief from the court. I want to mention that our lawsuit is joined by a number of jurisdictions across the country, including New Haven, Connecticut, Portland, Oregon, King County, Washington. And I'm here to introduce our Santa Clara County Counsel, Tony Lepresti. I very much appreciate the partnership between our offices. And as I mentioned, Santa Clara is co-leading this case with us.
Good morning. I want to begin by thanking City Attorney David Chiu and his extraordinary team for their leadership and partnership with Santa Clara County in standing up for the constitutional rights of our residents. Santa Clara's core mission is to care for its most vulnerable residents and to deliver the critical services that they need to survive and to thrive. Santa Clara's mission, our job, is not to enforce immigration laws. And the Constitution could not be more clear that the federal government can't require us to help with enforcement of civil immigration laws. In constitutional speak, we call that commandeering. The federal government can't commandeer our local government. They can't commandeer our local resources. And they can't commandeer our local law enforcement to help them carry out a vision of mass deportation. You might ask why Santa Clara and San Francisco and hundreds of other jurisdictions choose not to cooperate with the federal government. For us, it's simple. We are striving to create a culture of trust and security within our communities so that our residents know that they can come to the county when they are in need or when they can be of help. That includes feeling safe coming to local law enforcement to report crimes or to participate in investigations without fearing that they or their loved ones face deportation. Our non-cooperation policies are designed to protect that trust and security. And the federal government can't weaponize federal funding to bully us away from that commitment to trust and security. We worked hand in hand with San Francisco in 2017 to enforce the Constitution against the Trump administration. We litigated before and we prevailed. We are litigating again and we will prevail again. Thank you.
I want to take a moment and thank the team in my office that has been working around the clock really since the inauguration of Donald Trump. Our litigators, Karun Talak, Nancy Harris, Sarah Eisenberg, Molly Lee, Alex Holtzman, and others. Advice attorneys, Jenna Clark, Alicia Cabrera, Kate Kimberlin, Valerie Lopez, Ann Pearson, Christina Fletes, Jesse Minardi, and others. Our legal professionals, Elizabeth Colbrick, Katie Dunn, Sarah Gutierrez, as well as Yale Law School's SFAL program. And at this moment, I'd like to invite up our Chief Deputy, Yvonne Mere, to make a few remarks in Spanish.
Buenos días, mi nombre es Ivonne Mere y yo soy abogado y trabajo como jefe de todo el litigio de la Oficina del Abogado de la Ciudad de San Francisco. Hoy la Ciudad de San Francisco y el Condado de Santa Clara, en conjunto con las ciudades de New Haven en Connecticut, Portland en Oregón y el Condado de King en el estado de Washington, vamos a presentar un litigio contra el presidente Trump, el fiscal general de los Estados Unidos y varios líderes de diferentes departamentos federales. El presidente y el gobierno federal están violando la ley y la Constitución federal, exigiendo que ciudades y condados ayuden a enforzar inmigración federal. En el primer día de su presidencia, el presidente anunció una orden ejecutiva enfocada en Sanctuary City, o ciudades, condados y estados santuarios. Para clarificar, ciudades santuarias no esconden o albergan criminales. Ciudades santuarias tienen leyes y pólizas que dan prioridad a la seguridad pública local, dejando que el gobierno federal ejecuta las leyes federales de inmigración. A través de la orden ejecutiva y unos memorandos del Departamento de Justicia, el presidente intenta forzarnos a implementar sus pólizas y prioridades, requiriendo que ciudades santuarias ayuden a enforzar las leyes federales de inmigración y amenazando nuestras ciudades santuarias, no solamente con litigios civiles y penales criminales, pero con quitarnos el financiamiento federal si no cumplimos con lo que él quiere. Las acciones del presidente y el gobierno federal violan la ley y la Constitución y tratan de crear un derecho y un poder que no tiene la rama ejecutiva. Y la ciudad de San Francisco, el condado de Santa Clara y las otras ciudades y condados, en este caso, estamos pidiendo que la Corte requiera que el presidente y el gobierno federal cumplan con las leyes y la Constitución. Gracias.
Thank you. That concludes our comments. Happy to answer any questions.
Can you talk a little bit about the differences between what the Trump administration tried to do last time around and this time, and the difference between the lawsuit, if that's, that
So at some levels, there are not many differences. And in fact, he is reinstating the original executive order that a court had held and the Ninth Circuit had held were unconstitutional. But in addition to that, he is now also threatening local officials, state officials with investigations, criminal and civil prosecutions.
What relief are you seeking in this lawsuit?
Quite a few pieces. Sarah, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, at a high level, Sarah Eisenberg from the San Francisco City Attorney's Office. We are seeking declaration that these executive actions are unconstitutional and unlawful, and an injunction that prohibits them from enforcing them against jurisdictions that have these policies of non-cooperation with federal immigration authorities.
Why did it only go to the Ninth Circuit last time?
So there were actually several cases that raised this. Some of them we prevailed at the Ninth Circuit, and the Trump administration made a decision not to go further, but to actually withdraw the initial executive order. And some of them, the administration changed over before there was an opportunity for them to go all the way up.
These threats to investigate local officials and calls to maybe commandeer local resources are at this point still threats, yes? So why take preemptive legal action rather than wait for those to come to fruition and then seek relief when they do?
So the first executive order that came down articulated this strategy, and that was a number of weeks ago. But this week, when the Bondi memo came down, it made it very clear what would happen. And then yesterday, when the city of Chicago and the state of Illinois were sued by the Trump administration, that made it abundantly clear and abundantly real that this enforcement would happen.
Do you have any indication that the Trump administration, from after San Francisco officials, have they said anything to you, Department of Justice?
From our perspective, We think any and all sanctuary jurisdictions are going to be targeted, and what has happened this week made that abundantly clear.
If Bondi is successful in her attempt to strip federal funding, I mean, how much does San Francisco stand to lose?
So San Francisco on our own, we receive billions of dollars of federal funding. This would be catastrophic to our city, to the services that we need to provide to our community and to our local economy.
I'll just add for Santa Clara, it's a similar situation. We have billions of dollars at stake, including money that is devoted to our health system. We have the second largest public health system in the state of California. It's critical that we're able to provide those health services and the community services that federal funding helps support. So our core mission really is at stake here.
This is still a threat at this point, right? There's been no sort of funding freeze to sanctuary cities in these orders.
There has certainly been communications that have been issued. One thing I'll say to that point is we have seen the administration moving so fast and oftentimes so chaotically, it's difficult to tell when they are putting something forward or withdrawing it. So rather than be caught flat-footed, we definitely felt like we needed to be proactive rather than wait for the impacts to our residents in our community.
Funding stops as a result of these memos.
That's correct.
My understanding is that the commandeering sort of interpretation is played out in case law, right, under the 10th Amendment. I'm just wondering if you guys are worried about the Supreme Court and just how many judges Trump appointed the first time, maybe making a different interpretation of the 10th Amendment.
I'll start by saying it's our perspective that judges that follow the rule of law will side with us, particularly given the precedent that we have here. We'll obviously see how that happens as we proceed, but the laws on the books are clear.
You expecting more jurisdictions to join this lawsuit?
We are, absolutely. And we're in conversations as we speak. We'll be filing the complaint later today, in part because we're still gathering names and information that we can put into our complaint related to other jurisdictions.
Are there any other Bay Area jurisdictions that are part of this, or you can share maybe?
There's very likely at least another Bay Area jurisdiction, and we're waiting. We'll likely have more to say about that in the near future.
Have you spoken to Mayor Lurie about this action, and has he in support of it?
I have advised Mayor Lurie of this. We had a very good conversation. He understands why we're needing to move forward at this time to defend our city.
Are there any other actions that Trump has taken in the last week or last couple of days that you expect yourself or other jurisdictions to eventually present a lawsuit against?
I think what I would say is, as countless legal observers will tell you, Donald Trump has been openly violating the law and the Constitution on almost a daily basis. Just to give a number of examples, he is trying to ignore the constitutional right to birthright citizenship, which our office is litigating. He's violating separation of powers by trying to cut off federal funding that Congress has authorized and shutting down agencies that Congress has also authorized. He's violating the law by firing inspector generals and federal prosecutors without notice, as well as giving billionaires access to private financial data. We, of course, are monitoring all of these circumstances, and we'll take action when we need to defend our city.
Does your office have the capacity to do that work?
Well, I have to just thank the incredible professionals in our office who are literally working around the clock and not sleeping at this time. We need to do whatever we can to uphold the rule of law.
I'll just say that we're very privileged to be working in coalition with a whole host of other local jurisdictions, and we fully anticipate that there's going to be a flood of necessary litigation that we're going to need to bring forward, and we are going to be working hand in hand with partner jurisdictions and making sure that we push back on the unlawful and unconstitutional policies of the administration.
Were there any conversations with Attorney General Bonta since California is a sanctuary state, or is that just an entirely different issue?
We've had conversations with the AG's office on a number of topics. I'm not going to go into what those are, but we certainly have been in communication with our AG. And with that, unless anyone has any other questions, appreciate you being here. I know there are folks who can do individual interviews. Thank you so much.